Well, hello once again, fellow flight simmers and cockpit builders. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. As I was getting ready to start doing my series again of the Back to Basics, because as you guys already know, the SimVimX website and configurator and custom converter and everything changed again. So a lot of my old videos have become pretty much irrelevant because if people that are just starting out go back now, they're going to see that nothing looks the same as what I'm showing on my videos. So I wanted to redo all those videos, but I was having a little bit of a hard time getting started on that. So as I was going through some of my boxes and everything, I came across some nostalgia, I guess you can say, and it kind of inspired me to try to make a video of my flight simulation journey and the evolution of my home cockpit. And at the same time, I want to kind of show my process that I was building, to have the home setup that I have today, which is what you see here in back of me in this background picture. So this is what I pretty much had when I started getting back into flight simulation in about 2016, 2017, early 2017. I joined VATSIM in 2004 or 5. I think it was May of 2004 or 5. I don't remember which one it was, but so eventually, I put all this stuff away. I had it in storage for like 6 years or more because I never, like I said, I never really had a computer that could run it. And then eventually I got this Dell that you can see down here in the picture here, and this was a Core 2 quad. And I don't remember how many, maybe at that time I already had 4 GB of memory. I don't really quite remember well. And I probably had a NVIDIA 6800 GT video card in there with 256 megabytes of video memory. But that's what I had back in those days. So eventually I traded in all my CH product stuff. I sold them because I found this guy that was selling the yoke, the throttle quadrant, and he had these three panels right here. So I went and bought everything off of him. I think it was like around $400 back in 2017 or so. And so I got everything that you see here now. And I made these little wannabe throttle attachments, to make it look a little bit like the 737. And for me, it felt, a lot more realistic than having the blue and black little knobs on it from Satec. So at this point, I had already heard that you can interface buttons and switches and stuff, to the computer so that you can use it with Flight Simulator. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna make myself uh, an overhead panel. Just all I wanted to do was basically emulate the overhead panel for the lights and everything for the 737. That's always been, other than some GA aircraft and all that, this has always been the aircraft that I fly the most. So I wanted to start building something that would model it. And actually, the funny thing is that um, I think when I started this, it used to be called ArtSimX. It wasn't called SimVim yet, or SimVimX like it is now. It was ArtSimX. And so I built this little overhead panel, overhead light panel for the switches here, and everything worked, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So so this is how it looked after I put that on there. I put it on top of my monitor here. And the problem is that when I started building this, I don't remember if multiplexers were a thing or not. So I started doing all these long wires and everything, taking every single switch to the Arduino, and it became very messy, very quick. If I could tell anybody now, don't do what I did, because you're gonna have a rat's nest like I'm gonna show you in the next couple of pictures. So eventually, my Arduino started looking like this. And you can see all these white ones right here. They're all the ones that come from that overhead switch panel. But by this point, I had already started putting some more stuff. I don't remember exactly what I had yet, but and then I decided that this is when I learned later on about multiplexers. So I made this little thing on the bottom here, which is what I call my data distribution hub or address bus hub. So this is where I split off wires to all my multiplexers. And this is what I'll tell people right now. Do not do what I did. Don't do this because it is terrible. So then I decided to go ahead and redo this overhead panel here that I started with. And I decided to use multiplexers because by then I had already learned that we can use multiplexers and make everything much neater. So I took all the switches and rewired everything and put them on two multiplexers for this panel. and then all I had to do was carry two single wires to the Arduino, and then of course the other wires that go to the data hub or the address bus. And that's what I did. So this was, instead of having, all these wires going to the Arduino, now I just had these two white wires going to the Arduino, I mean gray, and then I had these other ones going to the data distribution hub. And then this is what it started looking like, so you can see already by this point I already had a lot more panels that I had built. But I had a multiplexer here, another one here, I had two more over here. There was pretty much multiplexers all over the place by this point. So it still looks like this today. I haven't had the nerve yet to take everything down and rebuild everything a lot neater. um, Thankfully everything works. Nothing has been like very erratic. Once in a while I did have, before they started recommending putting a resistor on the multiplexers to try to get rid of the stray electrical noise and signals. I did have a couple of switches and everything that would just randomly go on and off all the time, but for the most part it's pretty good. So I haven't destroyed it all to rebuild it, but someday, maybe when I have a bigger place, I will do that. So then I started trying to build an EFIS panel, and I don't have a 3D printer or a CNC machine or laser cutter or engraver or anything like that. So everything that I do is just basically very homemade, very rudimentary. I use a white pen marker or whatever to write these letters on there. Man, I've seen some setups from people that email me or that comment in my YouTube videos that are amazing. I mean, I get blown away by how realistic they are. But I imagine that's what you can do when you either spend a lot of money or you have a 3D printer and all that other machinery. But I don't have it, so this is my rudimentary homemade stuff here. All right, so I guess in a way I'm just trying to show that you don't need to have experience and you don't need to be fancy and have all that equipment in order to make something. You could make it even with cardboard if you really wanted to. So I made this EFS panel here, and then I decided to make the other side of it. I just started putting together buttons and switches that I needed, right? So that's what I did. So I have a transponder light here, some switches, the wipers, and I actually wired these wipers so that they can actually do both the left and the right with a single switch, taking it to do two different multiplexers. All right, so over time, this is what I was coming up with. I still had my SATIC throttle quadrant, and I still had my uh, SATIC yoke, and by then I already had the SATIC rudder pedals, of course. And then I had my overhead panel, I had my EFIS panel, and I made a rudimentary MCP panel right here, and then this other panel on the side. I had already put the parking brake switch here and some other buttons and switches over here, and then these down here. So my home cockpit is not modeled after a real airplane. It's just a bunch of buttons and switches and encoders, and now I even added displays that you'll see way at the end. Um, but this is what I got. Oh, and I already started using this tablet for the FMC or the CDU. So it's starting to take shape at this point. All right, so then I started building other panels. I started, as I said before, I said, well, this is easy, so I might as well just make more. And all this for me took a long time. I've done this over the period of 5 years because I made a panel, then I waited 3 to 6 months, and I made another little panel. Then I would wait a year and I would make another one. Well, you get the point. But I think that if I had to go back and do all this again, knowing what I know now, or not stopping, I think I can probably get all this done in a couple of months, maybe 3 months at the most, because yeah, we still have to work and sleep and everything. So then I got much neater at wiring because I noticed that at the beginning I was making a mess out of my wiring. And like I said before, by then I was using multiplexers. So I started, using multiplexers on almost everything I did. And this is what it looked like after that. So that was that panel. Then I decided to make this panel, which right now it looks a lot different because I've written all kinds of other commands on it for different airplanes. I think originally I was testing this as a panel for the Challenger 300, I believe, and that's why I made that. But see, this one right here also just uses one multiplexer, and then I just use one Arduino pin like everything else now. So I think I could still do a little bit better, but it's a lot better than how I started, I'll tell you that. And then I made this little, this is the ADF radio actually that I made when I was trying to show Vlad that it did not work with the Airfoil Lab Cessna 172. This is what got me started on that whole thing about custom commands and data revs because we couldn't change a lot of them. So I made this radio. I don't even use it in my setup right now. I made this radio just to prove to him that even if you have the real radio in your home cockpit, it does not work with custom airplanes sometimes. And I just use the Airfoil Labs 172 as an example because that's an airplane that I used to fly all the time. I still do, but right now I've been flying other things. So this is how the wiring looks in back of that one. Obviously a lot neater once again. And then eventually I got to what I have now, which is pretty much this setup right here. So, you know, it all started with this overhead panel up here. And then I added the EFIS panel, the wannabe MCP panel right here with no displays. And then I added the other panel on this side. Oh, and then I also added the transponder little thing right here. It's like a transponder radio with a little display over here. And then I added these three right here for the 737s, another display up here for the heading, another one right here that I use for different things sometimes. And then this is the one I showed you a little while ago that I think I originally made also for the Challenger 300. So that's that one right there. And I use this Samsung tablet for the EFB for the 737, the Zibo. That one uses Flight Manager to get all the data from the simulator. And then I have this other panel that I showed you guys there a little while ago that I did I have a bunch of writing on it because a lot of these buttons I'm using also for the 737. Oh, and then I also added the fuel cutoff switches for the 737 right here to linear potentiometers. So that's what I have now. That's pretty much my journey. And you know, a lot of times, um, I go back and I think about all the things I would have done differently, which I already told you guys about. But at the same time, I also think about using other products like Air Manager. It was like $20 I think to use it for the tablet, for the Android program. But I think the Windows version is like $80 or something, $70, and I don't have that one. But then again, there's MobiFlight, which it's very good too. I mean, it has the big advantage that is multi-platform. So if you want to use um, Prepare 3D, X-Plane, or Microsoft Flight Simulator, you can build a home cockpit for all of those. And SimVimX, as you guys already know, is only for X-Plane, and I think it's only 11 and 12. I don't even know if it works on 10, but hopefully there's nobody using 10 anymore. So so this is my solution that I use, and I've seen some, like I told you earlier, I've seen some amazing setups that I can't even believe that people are asking me questions when they're building something so good and so detailed and real, but anyway, so I'm glad I'm able to help in some way, at least with my rudimentary homemade parts here that I make in my little test panels. Um, but now we get to the present now. So I've been struggling, like I said at the beginning of the video, with how to make um, the videos all over again. Sometimes I feel like, well, I already went over everything, but then I remember that there's always new people that are learning, that are actually just getting into flight simulation. And I still see in a lot of the forums, I see a lot of people saying that they just got X-Plane 12 or whatever, and maybe one day, those people are going to want to build a home cockpit setup or something. And I'll say it again because I say it all the time. I still really honestly believe that this is by far the easiest solution to making a home cockpit. I mean, it doesn't get any easier than point and click to build your configuration file and to get buttons and switches working, just like in no time. So I'm gonna keep recommending this one. I have Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, but I don't see any reason to use it. There's a lot of things I don't like about it, which I don't want to get into in this video here. But needless to say, I am perfectly happy with X-Plane 11, and I do have X-Plane 12. But once again, I get into the same position that I've been in my whole life, is that I always have a computer that's not fast enough to run at decent settings, even though it does run it pretty good, but with the GA aircraft and helicopters. But if I want to use the Zibo, or I haven't even tried any of the other airliners. I haven't really purchased any of them for X-Plane 12 yet, but it doesn't run them very good. I think I drop into the low 20s if I try to fly the Zibo on X-Plane 12 on my current computer. And it's not a bad computer. I mean, it's a Core i7 8700K. I have 32 gigs of RAM. I have a 3080 Ti on it, and I have like four SSD drives where I have the simulator and Windows installed and everything. So it's a decent computer, but it is like 5, 6 years old now, and I do see that it does struggle with X-Plane 12. So that's the reason why I'm still on 11, and I love 11. I don't see nothing wrong with it, but some of the eye candy on X-Plane 12 is very nice to look at and amazing. So anyway, that is my journey. Hopefully it inspired some new people to maybe want to start building their home setup, and they'll get started on it. And I'll try to get started on making those other back to basics videos again and see where we go from here. And if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I know that sometimes these videos turn out a little bit too long. My girlfriend always says that I talk too much, but I just try to explain everything as good as I can, and that's where we are. All right. Well, see you guys on the next one.